In the far north of Roman Britain, beyond the settled towns and paved roads of the empire, there was a land of mist, mountains, and warriors who refused to kneel. It was a place the Romans called Caledonia. To them, it was the edge of the known world. To the tribes who lived there, it was home. And in the year 83 AD, that wild frontier became the stage for one of the most dramatic confrontations in ancient British history, the Battle of Mons Graupius. This is the story of ambition, resistance, strategy, and the clash between an expanding empire and a people determined to remain free. By 83 AD, Rome had ruled much of Britain for nearly 4 decades. Since the invasion ordered by Emperor Claudius in 43 AD, the legions had carved roads through forests, erected forts across river valleys, and founded towns that mirrored the architecture and authority of the Mediterranean world. Southern Britain had been subdued through a mixture of force and diplomacy. Tribal kings were replaced or converted into client rulers. Trade flowed, taxes were collected, Roman law spread steadily outward. But the north was different. Beyond the Fourth Clyde line, the land grew harsher. Mountain ridges cut across the horizon, dense forests cloaked valleys. Weather shifted rapidly, bringing cold rain and rolling fog. Here lived tribes the Romans grouped together under the name Caledoni, though they were not a single unified nation. They were a patchwork of clans bound by kinship, honor, and fierce independence. Into this environment marched one of Rome's most capable commanders, Gnaeus Julius Agricola. Agricola had been appointed governor of Roman Britain in 77 AD. He was experienced, disciplined, and politically astute. Unlike many governors who sought quick glory, Agricola moved methodically. Over several years, he consolidated Roman control in Wales, crushed revolts, strengthened supply lines, and reorganized garrisons. He built forts at strategic intervals, ensuring communication and rapid troop movement. He understood that conquest required infrastructure as much as courage. Yet Agricola was not content with holding the line. He wanted to finish what previous governors had begun, to bring the entirety of Britain under Roman control. Each campaigning season, his forces pushed farther north. Roman legions marched with auxiliaries recruited from across the empire. Batavians from the Rhine Delta, Tungrians from modern Belgium, a cavalry from Gaul and Spain. These were professional soldiers, drilled relentlessly, equipped with standardized armor, shields, and weapons. They built fortified camps every night, even on hostile ground. Their discipline was their greatest weapon. As Agricola advanced into Caledonia, resistance stiffened. The tribes avoided open confrontation at first. They harassed Roman supply lines, launched surprise attacks on isolated units, and melted back into forests and hills. The Romans responded with brutal efficiency, burning settlements suspected of aiding resistance and fortifying their positions. By 82 AD, Agricola had reached territory no Roman army had firmly controlled before. He even sent a fleet to sail around parts of northern Scotland, demonstrating Rome's naval capability and mapping the coastline. It was psychological warfare as much as reconnaissance. The message was clear: Rome could reach anywhere. But the Caledonian tribes understood something equally important. If they continued to fight separately, they would fall separately. Roman tactics thrived on dividing opponents. So, for perhaps the first time in their history, many northern tribes united under a single war leader. That leader was Calgacus. Very little is known about Calgacus outside the account of the Roman historian Tacitus, who happened to be Agricola's son-in-law. Tacitus provides the only surviving detailed narrative of the campaign and battle. According to him, Calgacus was a man of both noble birth and fierce spirit, chosen for his bravery and hatred of Roman domination. Tacitus records a speech attributed to Calgacus before the battle. Whether the words are exact or a Roman literary reconstruction, they capture the defiant spirit of the northern tribes. Calgacus is said to have described the Romans as robbers of the world, who, having exhausted the lands near them, now sought to plunder even the remotest regions. He warned that Rome called it peace when they had made a desert. The tribes gathered in large numbers, perhaps tens of thousands of warriors. They carried long, slashing swords, spears, oval shields decorated with patterns, and wore little armor compared to Roman troops. Some wore cloaks fastened with brooches, their hair long and sometimes lime-washed to stand stiff. Chariots, though less common than in earlier British warfare, were still used in some capacity to create noise and mobility. The stage was set. The exact location of Mons Graupius remains debated among historians. Some suggest it lay in northeastern Scotland, possibly near the Grampian Mountains. Others propose sites closer to the Moray Firth. The name itself, Mons Graupius, may refer to a hill or elevated ridge. What seems clear is that the battlefield featured high ground occupied by the Caledonians. Agricola's army likely consisted of around 20,000 men, including auxiliaries and possibly a smaller number of legionaries held in reserve. He positioned his forces carefully. According to Tacitus, Agricola placed the auxiliaries in the front line and kept the legions behind them. This was both a tactical and political calculation. If victory came, auxiliaries would bear much of the initial risk, sparing Roman citizen soldiers. If defeat threatened, the legions would serve as a disciplined backbone. The Caledonian army took position on rising ground. Their numbers may have exceeded the Roman force significantly. Warriors filled the slopes, with additional forces visible behind them. From a distance, their mass must have seemed overwhelming. On the morning of the battle, mist likely clung to the hills. The air was cold. Armor creaked. Horses stamped. War cries echoed across the valley. Agricola addressed his troops. Tacitus presents him as calm and confident. He reminded them of their victories over the past 7 years, of the honor awaiting them if they completed the conquest of Britain. He pointed out that there was nowhere left for the enemy to retreat. This was their final stand. He encouraged discipline and unity, virtues that had defined Roman success for centuries. But across the field, Calgacus stirred his warriors with promises of freedom and warnings of slavery. For them, this was not about imperial expansion or glory. It was about survival. The battle began with skirmishing. Projectiles filled the air. Roman javelins, tribal spears, perhaps sling stones. The auxiliaries advanced uphill, maintaining formation. The terrain likely made tight Roman manipular tactics more difficult, but their training allowed them to adapt. The Caledonians initially held firm. Their position on higher ground gave them an advantage. They surged downward at moments, attempting to break the Roman line through sheer momentum. But Roman discipline proved decisive. Agricola ordered the Batavian and Tungrian cohorts, elite auxiliary infantry skilled in close combat, to charge. They engaged the Caledonians at close quarters. Roman training emphasized short, controlled thrusts with the gladius, targeting exposed areas. Celtic swords, longer and designed for slashing, were less effective in tight formation. As fighting intensified, the Romans maintained cohesion. When parts of their line wavered, reserves were fed into the gap. Roman cavalry on the flanks maneuvered to disrupt Caledonian movements. Meanwhile, the tribes struggled to coordinate their large numbers effectively. Individual bravery was abundant, but centralized command under battlefield chaos proved challenging. At a critical moment, Agricola is said to have ordered a flanking maneuver. Cavalry units swept around the sides of the Caledonian position. Attacked from front and flank, their formation began to buckle. Once the line broke, the advantage shifted dramatically. while Roman troops pursued fleeing warriors across the slopes and into nearby woods. Tacitus claims that around 10,000 Caledonians were killed, compared to fewer than 400 Romans. These numbers are likely exaggerated to emphasize Roman superiority, but the outcome was clear: a decisive Roman victory. Calgacus himself disappears from the historical record after the battle. Whether he fell in combat or escaped into the highlands is unknown. Agricola did not press much farther north after Mons Graupius. Though victorious, the logistical challenges of permanently occupying the far north were immense. Supply lines stretched thin, the climate was harsh, resistance would likely continue in guerrilla form. Within a few years, Agricola was recalled to Rome. Some historians speculate that Emperor Domitian, wary of successful generals gaining too much popularity, removed him deliberately. Agricola retired quietly and died a few years later. The Roman army eventually withdrew to more defensible lines farther south. In later decades, they constructed Hadrian's Wall, marking a defined boundary of imperial control. For a brief period, the Antonine Wall extended Roman reach slightly northward, but Caledonia was never fully subdued. In that sense, Mons Graupius was both a victory and a limit. It demonstrated the unmatched discipline and tactical superiority of the Roman military. It showcased the ability of Rome to project power to the edge of the known world. Yet it also revealed the immense cost and difficulty of holding such distant territory. For the tribes of northern Britain, the battle became part of a longer story of resistance. So though defeated in open combat, they were never entirely conquered culturally or politically. Rome influenced the South profoundly: language, architecture, governance. But beyond the frontier, indigenous traditions endured. Tacitus used the campaign of Agricola not only to record history, but to comment subtly on Roman imperialism. His portrayal of Calgacus's speech offers a rare literary acknowledgement, from a Roman perspective, of the moral complexity of empire. The line about making a desert and calling it peace has echoed through centuries as a critique of conquest. Mons Graupius stands at the intersection of myth and documented history. Archaeologists continue to search for definitive evidence of the battlefield's location. Fort remains, marching camps, and Roman artifacts provide clues, but certainty remains elusive. What remains undeniable is the symbolic power of the encounter. On a cold hillside in northern Britain, two worlds faced each other. One was an empire of roads, laws, legions, and vast administrative systems stretching from Spain to Syria. The other was a network of clans rooted in ancestral lands, valuing freedom above submission. Steel met steel. Discipline met defiance. The outcome shaped the trajectory of Roman Britain for generations. Even after the legions eventually left Britain in the early 5th century, the memory of Rome lingered, in ruins, in roads still traced across the countryside, in stories passed down. And in the north, the spirit of resistance endured, contributing to the distinct cultural identities that would later shape Scotland. The Battle of Mons Graupius reminds us that history is rarely simple. It is not only about winners and losers, but about ambition, survival, and the human cost of expansion. Thank you for watching this deep exploration of the Battle of Mons Graupius. If you are passionate about ancient warfare and the untold stories of history, stay with us for more journeys into the battles that shaped our world.